On Christmas Eve, my father stood up in front of 15 relatives and gave me an ultimatum: apologize to my brother for spreading lies, or he would cut off my tuition the very next morning. My brother Tyler, the golden child, the medical resident, the family's shining star, sat across from me with a smirk that said he'd already won. My mother nodded along like they'd rehearsed this. My aunts and uncles stared at their plates, pretending to be invisible. I looked around that table, at all the faces that refused to meet my eyes, and I said one word: fine. The next morning, when Tyler saw me dragging my suitcase down the stairs, his face went white. Please tell me you didn't send it. My father's smile froze mid-breath. Send what? I'm Scarlett Appleton, 24 years old, and this is the story of how I ended my brother's medical career with a single email. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. To understand what happened that Christmas, you need to understand something about my family first. In the Appleton household, there was Tyler, and then there was everyone else. From the moment he was born, my brother was treated like royalty. He got the seat of honor at every dinner table. His report cards were framed and hung in the living room. His soccer trophies filled an entire display case by the stairs. Mine? They went into a drawer somewhere. I stopped looking for them after a while. When Tyler got into college, my parents threw a party with 50 guests. When I got accepted with a partial scholarship, my mother said, "That's nice, honey," and went back to planning Tyler's graduation trip to Europe. I remember once when I was 16, I won a state science fair. First place. I came home buzzing with excitement, clutching my trophy like it was made of gold. My father glanced at it and said, "That's great, sweetheart. Did you hear? Tyler made the dean's list again." That was the day I stopped expecting them to see me. My mother used to say it outright. "Girls don't need to be smart, Scarlett. You just need to find a good husband." She'd laugh like it was a joke, but her eyes never laughed along. When it came time for medical school, my parents poured over $300,000 into Tyler's education. They refinanced the house. They dipped into retirement funds. An investment in the family's future, my father called it. My future? I got a partial scholarship and a campus job washing beakers in the chemistry lab. I used to think if I just worked harder, they'd finally see me. I was 20 before I realized they weren't blind, they just didn't want to look. Despite everything, I loved science. It was the one place where effort actually mattered, where results couldn't be faked or bought with favoritism. In my sophomore year, I started working on my undergraduate thesis, a research project on a novel method for protein synthesis. It wasn't glamorous work. Months of failed experiments, late nights in the lab, equations that made my head spin. But slowly, something beautiful emerged. My faculty advisor, Dr. Morrison, called it exceptional work with genuine publication potential. Those words meant more to me than anything my parents had ever said. I was so proud of that research. So stupidly, naively proud. That Thanksgiving, Tyler came home from his residency in Boston. He seemed tired, stressed, more human than I'd seen him in years. We actually talked for once, like real siblings. "What are you working on?" he asked, sounding genuinely curious. I told him everything. The protein synthesis method, the potential applications, the breakthrough I'd had in October. I even pulled up my research on my laptop, walking him through the data with excitement bubbling in my chest. "This is impressive, Scarlett," Tyler said, nodding slowly. "Really impressive. Send me the PDF. I'd love to read it more carefully. Maybe I can share it with some colleagues who work in related fields." I sent it that night, heart swelling with something dangerously close to hope. Maybe this was it. Maybe Tyler would finally see me as something more than his invisible little sister. He texted back a thumbs-up emoji. Then silence. Weeks passed. I asked once if he'd shared it with anyone. "Still looking into it," he said vaguely. I didn't push. I sent him my research like a little sister showing her big brother a drawing. I didn't know I was handing him a loaded weapon. 2 years slipped by. I threw myself into my studies, spending more time in the lab than in my childhood bedroom. Home became a place I visited out of obligation, not desire. Every trip back meant the same exhausting performance: smile through dinner, nod along to Tyler's accomplishments, pretend it didn't sting when Mom asked why I couldn't be more like my brother. Tyler just got accepted into the top residency program in Boston, my father announced one Thanksgiving. Mass General. Do you know how competitive that is? I got a research fellowship, I offered. That's nice. Pass the gravy? I learned to expect nothing. It hurt less that way. But I also learned something else during those years. In my family, if you didn't have proof of something, it didn't exist. Promises meant nothing. Memories could be rewritten. Only documentation was real. So I kept everything. Every email, every draft, every file. I had a small metal box in my dorm room that held copies of important documents: birth certificate, passport, financial aid letters. My roommate thought I was paranoid. It's just how scientists work, I told her. You document everything. But the truth was simpler and sadder. I'd grown up in a house where my own mother would deny conversations we'd had the day before, where my father could look at my trophy and pretend he'd never seen it. In my family, your word meant nothing without proof, so I kept everything. One afternoon in October of my senior year, I was scrolling through Google Scholar when a notification popped up. A new paper in my field, published in the Journal of Clinical Biochemistry. The author's name made me stop breathing. Dr. Tyler Appleton. I clicked the link with numb fingers. The abstract loaded first. I read it once, twice, 3 times, each time hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. This was my research, my methodology, my protein synthesis framework. I scrolled to the introduction, and there it was. The exact phrasing I'd spent weeks crafting, the specific terminology I'd invented because nothing in the existing literature fit what I'd discovered. The results section contained my data, my graphs, my statistical analyses with the same sample sizes, the same margin of error, the same conclusions I'd drawn 18 months ago in my cramped little dorm room. Tyler had changed a few words here and there. He'd added a section on clinical applications that read like it was written by someone who'd never actually done the lab work. But the core of it, the heart of it, was mine. I had to put my laptop down because I couldn't breathe. For 20 minutes, I sat in the dark, staring at nothing. I'd spent 20 years believing I wasn't good enough, that I was the lesser sibling, the afterthought, the one who would never measure up to Tyler's brilliance. It took 20 minutes of reading to realize I was so good that he had to steal from me. The betrayal didn't feel hot, like anger. It felt cold, like ice water filling my lungs, drowning me from the inside. My brother hadn't just borrowed my research. He hadn't used a few ideas like it was nothing. He had taken my work, the one thing I'd built entirely on my own, the one achievement that was purely mine, and claimed it as his own. I picked up my phone and stared at Tyler's name in my contacts. Should I call him? Confront him? What would that even accomplish? I called him anyway. It was almost midnight, but Tyler answered on the third ring, sounding annoyed. "Scarlett? It's late. What's wrong?" I kept my voice steady, calm, like I was discussing the weather. "I saw your paper in the Journal of Clinical Biochemistry." Silence. 3 seconds. 4. Then Tyler laughed, a short, dismissive sound that made my stomach turn. "Oh, that. Yeah, I used a few of the ideas you shared with me. You should be flattered, honestly. Your work is finally getting some recognition." "A few ideas?" My grip tightened on the phone. "Tyler, that's my entire thesis, word for word." "Don't be dramatic." His voice hardened. "It's not like you were going to do anything with it. You're an undergrad. I'm a doctor. This research actually matters now that it has my name on it." "That's plagiarism. That's academic fraud." Another laugh, colder this time. "Who's going to believe you? You're a nobody, Scarlett. I'm a physician at Mass General. If you make accusations like that, you'll just embarrass yourself." I have the original files, time-stamped. I have emails from my advisor discussing this research 18 months before your paper was published. The line went quiet. When Tyler spoke again, his voice was different, lower, a threat wrapped in silk. Listen to me carefully. You're going to forget about this. You're going to delete whatever files you think you have, and you're never going to bring this up again. If you try to make trouble, I will destroy you. Mom and Dad will never believe you over me. You know that. He hung up. I sat in the dark, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. He was right about one thing. Our parents would never believe me. But that didn't mean I was going to stay silent. I drove home the following weekend, laptop bag clutched against my chest like armor. I'd prepared everything: the original files with metadata showing creation dates, the email exchanges with Dr. Morrison, side-by-side comparisons of Tyler's paper and my thesis. My parents were in the living room when I arrived. Tyler wasn't there. He'd coincidentally been called back to Boston for an emergency shift. "This needs to stop," my father said before I could even sit down. "Tyler told us you've been making wild accusations." My mother's eyes were red-rimmed. "How could you do this to your own brother? Just look at the evidence." I opened my laptop. This is my original research file. See the date? This is 18 months before Tyler's paper was published. And here, these are emails with my advisor discussing this exact methodology. My father didn't look at the screen. "Scarlett, enough." His voice carried the same authority he'd used when I was 5 years old and caught drawing on the walls. "Tyler has worked too hard for you to tear him down out of jealousy." Jealousy? The word tasted like ash. "Dad, this isn't about jealousy. He stole my work. Look at the timestamps." I said enough. He stood up, towering over me. "This family has invested too much in Tyler for you to destroy everything with your petty resentment." My mother reached for my hand. "Honey, Tyler's career. If you make these accusations public, you'll ruin him. You'll ruin all of us. Is that what you want?" I pulled my hand away. "What about what he did to me? Doesn't that matter?" Neither of them answered. And in that silence, I understood. I wasn't their daughter. I was an inconvenience they couldn't wait to marry off. The only question now was what I was going to do about it. That night, I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling I'd memorized over 21 years. The popcorn texture, the tiny crack near the window, the water stain shaped like a question mark that nobody had ever bothered to fix. I had two choices. I could stay quiet, swallow the injustice, let Tyler build his career on my stolen work while I faded into the background like I always had, or I could fight and risk losing everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Morrison. "Saw an interesting paper in JCMB, some familiar methodology. Let's chat Monday?" She'd noticed too. I thought about what she'd told me once, during a late night in the lab when an experiment had failed for the 6th time. "Integrity isn't something you can compromise on, Scarlett. Either you have it or you don't. There's no halfway." I sat up in bed, opened my laptop, and started making a list. First, secure all documentation. Original files, metadata extractions, email archives, multiple backups in multiple locations. Second, research the proper channels: academic integrity offices, medical boards, journal ethics committees. Every institution had procedures for reporting fraud. Third, get independent verification. If this was going to come down to my word against Tyler's, I needed experts who could analyze the evidence objectively. And fourth, the hardest one, prepare for the financial fallout. If my parents cut me off, I needed a plan B: scholarships, loans, whatever it took. I worked until 3 in the morning, organizing everything into folders with the same meticulous precision I'd used on my research. I had two choices: be the good daughter who stays silent, or be the woman who refuses to let her work be stolen. I chose myself. By the time I closed my laptop, A new determination had settled in my chest. Tyler thought this was over. He was wrong. If you've made it this far, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against your own family? Have you ever been told to stay quiet because keeping the peace was more important than the truth? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your stories. And if you're curious about what happened next, hit that like button and keep watching, because things are about to get a lot more intense. Now, back to the story. The next 3 months, I became a ghost. I went to class. I smiled at my parents during our obligatory weekly phone calls. I sent Tyler a polite birthday text in November. And behind the scenes, I built my case like a scientist preparing for the most important experiment of her life. First, the evidence. I extracted metadata from every original file: creation dates, modification histories, the digital fingerprints that proved when each document was born. I exported my email archives going back 2 years, flagging every exchange with Dr. Morrison that referenced my protein synthesis research. Then I found Turnitin. The plagiarism detection software was available through my university's Academic Integrity Office. I submitted both documents, my thesis and Tyler's published paper, under the guise of checking my own work for proper citation practices. The results came back in 48 hours. 94% match. 94%. Tyler hadn't just borrowed ideas, he'd copied my work almost verbatim, changing only enough words to make it look different to a casual reader. I printed the report and added it to my growing file. I also started digging into academic misconduct procedures. The Journal of Clinical Biochemistry had an ethics hotline. The Massachusetts Medical Board had protocols for investigating physicians accused of fraud. Tyler's medical school had an Office of Academic Integrity that handled retroactive complaints. Each institution had forms, timelines, evidence requirements. I studied them like I was preparing for the biggest exam of my life. By December, I had 47 pages of documentation, organized into sections, cross-referenced, and backed up on 3 different cloud services under encrypted folders. I named the master file Insurance. Tyler thought he was untouchable. He forgot that scientists are trained to document everything. And I'd been documenting my whole life. The transfer application was a long shot. Georgetown's biochemistry program was elite, competitive, and expensive. But they also offered full-ride scholarships for exceptional students, and I had nothing left to lose. I spent a week on my application essay, pouring everything into those pages. My passion for research, my methodology, my vision for advancing protein synthesis applications. I didn't mention Tyler. I didn't need to. 2 weeks after submitting, I received an email that made my heart stop. Dr. Eleanor Vance, professor of biochemistry at Georgetown, wanted to schedule a video interview. I'd read her papers. She was a legend in the field. 30 years of groundbreaking research, a reputation for absolute integrity, and zero tolerance for academic shortcuts. The interview was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon. I sat in my dorm room, laptop positioned on a stack of textbooks to get the camera angle right, palms sweating. Dr. Vance was exactly as formidable as I'd imagined. Silver hair pulled back severely, glasses perched on her nose, eyes that seemed to see straight through pretense. "Tell me about your protein synthesis methodology," she said without preamble. I talked for 20 minutes. She asked questions, detailed, probing questions that only someone who'd actually done the work could answer. I answered every one. Then she paused, removing her glasses to clean them. "Ms. Appleton, I recently read a paper in the Journal of Clinical Biochemistry. The methodology was remarkably similar to what you've just described. The author was a physician in Boston, Tyler Appleton." Her eyes met mine. "Any relation?" My throat tightened. "He's my brother." Dr. Vance nodded slowly. I thought as much. The clinical applications section read like it was written by someone who'd never actually performed the lab work. She leaned forward. "Send me everything you have." Dr. Vance didn't just believe me. She became my lifeline. Within a week, she'd fast-tracked my transfer application. The scholarship committee reviewed my materials and approved a full ride, tuition, housing, and a research stipend. I would start at Georgetown in January, but she also gave me something more valuable than money: validation. "I've been in academia for 30 years, Ms. Appleton," she told me during our second call. "I know theft when I see it, and I know exactly how institutions like to sweep these things under the rug when the accused is someone with credentials." She connected me with colleagues who specialized in academic integrity cases. She helped me understand the formal complaint process. She told me what to expect when powerful people felt threatened. "They'll attack your credibility," she warned. "They'll call you jealous, unstable, attention-seeking. Be prepared for that." I was prepared. I'd been hearing those words my whole life. Meanwhile, I worked double shifts at the campus lab, saving every dollar. I opened a bank account my parents didn't know about and started funneling my paychecks into it. I calculated exactly how long I could survive without family support. The answer was uncomfortable, but survivable. 18 months if I was careful. I also started moving things out of my parents' house during visits: my birth certificate, my passport, childhood photos I couldn't replace. Small things, easy to slip into my bag without anyone noticing. My roommate watched me pack one evening, eyebrows raised. "Going somewhere?" "Just being prepared," I said. She probably thought I was paranoid. But independence isn't just about money. It's about knowing that when you walk away, nothing can drag you back. By mid-December, I was ready. The only question was timing. In November, Tyler started calling. This was unusual. My brother had never been one for casual check-ins. We exchanged obligatory texts on holidays, maybe a brief call on birthdays. But suddenly he wanted to catch up. "How's school going?" His voice was too warm, too interested. "Mom says you've been busy." "Just the usual," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Classes, lab work." "That's great. Really great." A pause. "Hey, you haven't been talking to anyone about that research stuff, have you? The thing you mentioned a while back?" I felt my pulse quicken but kept my voice steady. "No, Tyler. I've been focused on school." "Good. That's good." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "Because I'd hate for any misunderstandings to hurt our relationship, you know? We're family." I hung up and stared at my phone for a long time. He was checking up on me, testing the waters. 2 days later, my mother called with questions wrapped in concern. "Honey, are you doing okay? You seem distant lately. Are you talking to anyone about family matters?" Then my father emailed a long, rambling message about family loyalty and the importance of sticking together, ending with, "I hope you've learned from our conversation and moved forward." They were circling like sharks who'd caught the scent of blood. The final confirmation came from Tyler himself in a text to my parents that he accidentally sent to the family group chat. "Keep an eye on her during Christmas. She's been acting strange. We need to keep her close." Keep her close, like I was a problem to be contained. They weren't checking on me out of love. They were checking if I'd stayed in my cage. Little did they know, I'd already found the key. I drove home on December 23rd, just like every other year. My car was packed differently this time, though. Everything important was already in storage at my new apartment near Georgetown, the one I'd signed a lease on 2 weeks ago without telling anyone. The suitcase in my trunk held just enough clothes to get through the holiday. And in my laptop bag, a single email sat in my drafts folder, addressed to 4 different institutions. The house looked the same as always: white lights on the bushes, wreath on the door, the smell of pine and cinnamon the moment you walked in. "Scarlett!" My mother hugged me like nothing had ever happened. "You look thin. Are you eating enough?" My father gave me a stiff nod. Tyler wasn't there yet. He was flying in Christmas Eve morning, making his grand entrance as always. Dinner that night was suffocating. Aunts and uncles I saw once a year asked about my little science hobby and whether I had a boyfriend yet. My mother steered every conversation back to Tyler. "Wait until you see him tomorrow. He looks so handsome in his white coat." I smiled and nodded and counted the hours. Christmas Eve. The house filled with relatives. 15 people crowded around tables pushed together in the dining room, plates piled high with ham and mashed potatoes and green bean casserole. Tyler arrived at noon, accepting hugs and handshakes like a returning hero. He caught my eye across the room and smirked. Just a flicker, just enough to let me know he thought he'd won. I watched them perform their perfect family charade one last time. I knew by tomorrow the stage would be mine. After dessert, my father stood up and clinked his glass. Before we open presents, he announced, I have something to address about Scarlett. Every head turned toward me. My father's face was stern, the same expression he wore when delivering verdicts at the dinner table throughout my childhood. Guilty until proven innocent. Except, I was never proven innocent. Some of you may not know this, he began, but Scarlett has been spreading harmful lies about her brother. Accusations that could destroy his career. Murmurs rippled through the room. My aunts exchanged glances. Uncle Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. Tyler has worked incredibly hard to become a doctor. He's the pride of this family. My father's voice grew harder. And I will not allow jealousy to tear us apart. I sat perfectly still, hands folded in my lap. So here's what's going to happen. He looked directly at me. Scarlett, you will apologize to Tyler right now, in front of everyone. You will admit that you made false accusations out of jealousy, and you will promise to never speak of this again. Tyler's smirk had evolved into a full smile. And if you refuse, my father continued, I'm cutting off your tuition, completely. As of tomorrow morning, you're on your own. The room fell silent. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. My mother reached over and patted my arm. Just apologize, honey. It's not that hard. Then we can all move on and have a nice Christmas. I looked around the table, 15 faces, not one of them willing to meet my eyes. Aunt Patricia, the lawyer, the one I'd always thought was different, studied her napkin like it contained the secrets of the universe. No one was going to defend me. Of course not, they never had. Tyler leaned forward slightly, waiting for my surrender. I took a breath. Fine. My father's shoulders relaxed. Good, now stand up and… I wasn't finished. I stood up slowly, smoothing my sweater. I'm not going to apologize, I said, my voice steady. And you don't need to pay my tuition anymore. I've already accepted a full scholarship to Georgetown starting next month. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's hand froze mid-reach for her wine glass. My father's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again like a fish gasping for air. And Tyler's smile vanished like someone had flipped a switch. What? My father's voice cracked. That's not possible. You can't just… I can, and I did. I picked up my purse from the back of my chair. My transfer was approved 3 weeks ago. Full ride, including housing and a research stipend. Scarlett, sit down. My mother's voice pitched high. Let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. I looked at Tyler, holding his gaze. I know what you did. I have proof. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise to make you all comfortable. Tyler's face went from pale to ashen. His fingers tightened around his wineglass. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. A huge mistake. No, Tyler. The mistake was trusting you. I walked toward the stairs, pausing at the doorway. The entire room was frozen, forks halfway to mouths, conversations dead mid-sentence. Good night, everyone. Merry Christmas. I went up to my old room, locked the door, and sat down at the desk where I'd done homework for 12 years. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. But underneath the fear, something else was rising. Relief, freedom, the terrifying, exhilarating certainty that there was no going back. I opened my laptop and stared at the draft email. They expected me to beg. I gave them something they never anticipated. Goodbye. 11:47 p.m. The house had finally gone quiet. I could hear distant murmurs downstairs, Probably my parents doing damage control with the relatives who hadn't fled immediately after my announcement. I sat in the glow of my laptop screen, cursor hovering over the send button. The email was addressed to 4 recipients: the Massachusetts Board of Registration in Medicine, the Office of Academic Integrity at Tyler's Medical School, the Editorial Ethics Committee at the Journal of Clinical Biochemistry, and the Program Director of the Internal Medicine Residency at Massachusetts General Hospital. CC, Dr. Eleanor Vance. The attachment folder contained 47 pages of documentation, metadata analyses, Turnitin reports showing 94% textual overlap, email exchanges with timestamps predating Tyler's publication by 18 months, a detailed timeline of my research process, corroborated by my faculty advisor. The body of the email was simple and professional. To whom it may concern, I am writing to report a case of academic misconduct and research theft. The attached documentation provides evidence that the paper, Novel Applications in Protein Synthesis, published in the Journal of Clinical Biochemistry, under the authorship of Dr. Tyler Appleton, was plagiarized from my unpublished undergraduate research. All original files, metadata, and correspondence are included. I am available for any follow-up investigation. Sincerely, Scarlett Appleton. My finger trembled over the trackpad. This would change everything. There would be no taking it back. I thought about Tyler's smirk at dinner, my father's ultimatum, my mother's hand patting my arm like I was a child who needed to be managed. I thought about 21 years of being invisible. I clicked send. The whoosh of the outgoing email sounded like a starting gun. The clock on my laptop ticked over to midnight. December 25th. Merry Christmas. I didn't send that email out of revenge. I sent it because the truth deserves to exist, even when it's inconvenient. I slept for 3 hours and woke at 6. My bags were already packed, had been for days, really. I did one final sweep of the room, checking drawers and closet corners for anything I might have left behind. There wasn't much. I'd been slowly moving things out for months. The house was still asleep when I carried my suitcase down the stairs. Early morning light filtered through the windows, catching dust motes floating above the untouched presents under the tree. I was almost to the front door when I heard footsteps behind me. Scarlett! Tyler stood at the bottom of the stairs in his pajamas, phone clutched in his hand. His face was the color of old paper. Please tell me you didn't send it. I turned, suitcase handle still gripped in my fist. From the kitchen doorway, my father appeared, coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. His smile, left over from whatever cheerful thought he'd been having, stalled mid-breath. Send what? Tyler didn't answer. He was staring at me with something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Fear. Raw, undisguised terror. Scarlett. His voice cracked. You have no idea what you've done. I looked at him, really looked, and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just a quiet certainty. Actually, Tyler, I know exactly what I've done. I pulled my coat on. Do you? My mother appeared at the top of the stairs, face puffy with sleep. What's going on? Why is everyone up? I opened the front door. Cold December air rushed in, sharp and clean. Merry Christmas, everyone. I stepped onto the porch. I have a flight to catch. The last thing I heard before the door closed was my father's phone beginning to ring. I didn't look back. Okay, I need to pause here for a second. If you're thinking, oh my God, she actually did it, hit that like button right now. I want to know how many of you are cheering for past me in this moment. And if you're wondering what happened to Tyler after those emails landed, what my family tried to do to stop the investigation, keep watching, because what came next was even more intense than I expected. Let me tell you what happened. The first response came 3 days after Christmas. I was in my new apartment near Georgetown, surrounded by unpacked boxes, when my phone buzzed with an email from the Office of Academic Integrity at Tyler's Medical School. Dear Ms. Appleton, we have received your complaint regarding Dr. Tyler Appleton and have initiated a formal investigation. Your documentation has been forwarded to our review committee. I read the email 3 times, making sure I understood correctly. They believed me. Or at least they believed the evidence enough to investigate. The next day, another notification. The Journal of Clinical Biochemistry had placed Tyler's paper under review pending investigation. It would be temporarily removed from their database until the matter was resolved. Then, on December 30th, the big one. An email from the Massachusetts Board of Registration in Medicine informed me that Dr. Tyler Appleton's medical license had been placed on administrative hold. He was suspended from clinical duties until further notice. My phone rang. Dr. Vance. "They've reached out to me for corroboration," she said without preamble. "I've provided my analysis of both papers and confirmed that the core methodology matches your original research timeline." "Thank you," I managed. "Don't thank me. You did the work, both the research and the documentation." Her voice softened slightly. "This is how the system is supposed to function, Scarlett, when someone is brave enough to use it." After we hung up, I sat on my bare mattress and stared at my hands. I'd spent 21 years being invisible, being dismissed, being told my achievements didn't matter. Now, institutions with real power were listening to me, believing me, taking action. It was terrifying and validating in equal measure. My phone buzzed again, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Tyler, we need to talk." I didn't respond to Tyler's text, but he called anyway, and kept calling. After the 12th missed call, I finally picked up, partly curiosity, partly exhaustion. "Scarlett." His voice was ragged, nothing like the smooth confidence I was used to. "You need to stop this. You need to call them and tell them you made a mistake." "I didn't make a mistake, Tyler." "Yes, you did!" His composure cracked completely. "Do you understand what's happening? I've been suspended. I can't see patients. I can't work. My entire career is on hold because of your little temper tantrum." "My temper tantrum?" I almost laughed. "You stole my research. You published it under your name. That's not a tantrum, Tyler. That's consequences." "I helped you!" His voice pitched higher. "I took your little undergrad project and gave it visibility. I turned it into something that actually mattered. You should be thanking me. You didn't help me. You stole from me. There's a difference." Silence. Then, a different tactic. "Scarlett, please." His voice dropped, turned pleading. "I'll give you credit. I'll tell them it was a collaborative project. I'll pay you. Whatever you want." "I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" He was nearly crying now. "What is it going to take for you to make this go away?" I thought about that question. Really thought about it. "I want the truth on the record," I said finally. "I want my work acknowledged as mine, and I want you to face the same standards you'd expect anyone else to face." "You're destroying me." "No, Tyler. You destroyed yourself 7 years ago when you decided your little sister's work was yours to take." I hung up. He didn't call again. When Tyler's tactics failed, my parents stepped in. My father's first move was legal. He hired a lawyer, an expensive one from what I heard, to explore options for fighting back. Defamation suits, cease and desist orders, anything to make the problem disappear. The lawyer reviewed my evidence and declined the case. "Your daughter has time-stamped documentation, metadata verification, and third-party expert corroboration," I was told he said. "If you pursue this, your son won't just lose the case, he'll face additional scrutiny." My father fired him and hired another lawyer. The second lawyer said the same thing. Then came my mother's approach. Guilt. She called me on a Sunday morning, voice thick with tears. "Scarlett, please, I'm begging you. Can't you see what you're doing to this family?" "Mom, Tyler stole my work. He made a mistake. People make mistakes. Does that mean you have to destroy his entire life?" "He didn't make a mistake. He made a choice, repeatedly, for months." "But you're his sister," she was sobbing now. "Family doesn't do this to each other. Family forgives. Family protects." Something in me went very still. Family doesn't steal from each other either, Mom. But Tyler did. And you chose to protect him instead of believing me. "I didn't." "You did. You both did. You looked at my evidence and told me I was jealous. You threatened to cut me off if I didn't apologize for being stolen from. My voice didn't waver. You don't get to lecture me about what family does. She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know who you've become, she finally whispered. This isn't the daughter I raised. You're right, I said. She's not. That daughter would have stayed silent. I'm someone better now. I hung up and blocked her number. 6 weeks later, I received the summons. The hearing was conducted via video conference. A panel of 5 people representing the medical board, the academic integrity office, and the journal's ethics committee. Tyler appeared from a different location, face gaunt, wearing the same confident expression that now looked like a mask stretched too thin. I presented my evidence methodically, the way Dr. Vance had coached me. Timeline first. Here's when I began the research. Here are the dated emails with my advisor. Here's the original file with creation metadata from 18 months before Tyler's publication. Then the comparison. 94% textual match on Turnitin. Identical methodology. Identical results. The only additions were Tyler's clinical applications section, which, as Dr. Vance testified, demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of the underlying laboratory processes. Tyler's defense was weak and scattered. This was a collaborative family project, he insisted. My sister shared ideas with me, which I then developed further. There was an implicit understanding. Do you have any documentation of this collaboration? The panel chair interrupted. Emails? Meeting notes? Any written agreement? Tyler's mouth opened, closed. It was informal. We're family. Dr. Appleton, the evidence suggests otherwise. The metadata on your paper was created 14 months after Ms. Appleton's original files. The only development appears to be the addition of clinical applications, which multiple experts have identified as inconsistent with the core methodology. The panel deliberated for 30 minutes. The verdict? Academic misconduct confirmed. Tyler's published paper would be officially retracted with a notice of plagiarism. His medical school degree was under review for potential revocation. His medical license suspension would continue pending a full ethics investigation. I watched Tyler's face as the decision was read. His mask finally cracked, and I felt nothing but the quiet satisfaction of truth finally being acknowledged. The fallout came in stages. First, the journal posted its retraction notice, right there on their website, on the same page where Tyler's paper used to be displayed with his name in bold. Retracted. This paper has been withdrawn due to confirmed plagiarism. The author misrepresented original research created by another party. Anyone searching for Tyler's work would find that notice, forever. Then the medical school made their decision. After their own investigation confirmed the panel's findings, they officially revoked Tyler's master's degree. Not suspended. Revoked. The diploma he'd framed and hung in his apartment meant nothing now. The Massachusetts Medical Board was next. Tyler's license wasn't just suspended, it was formally revoked with a 5-year bar on reapplication. Even after that period, he'd need to complete an extensive ethics rehabilitation program before he could even be considered. Mass General terminated his residency contract. The program director sent a brief clinical email. Given the circumstances, we feel it's in everyone's best interest to part ways. Just like that, 8 years of medical training, the $300,000 my parents had invested, the prestigious residency, the gleaming career everyone had sacrificed so much to build, crumbled to dust. But it didn't stop there. One of Tyler's former colleagues, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, filed her own complaint. Tyler had apparently borrowed her research notes during their fellowship year, publishing ideas she'd shared in confidence. With my case setting precedent, her complaint triggered another investigation. Tyler didn't just lose his job. He lost everything he'd spent a decade building because it was never really his to begin with. I heard through the family grapevine that he'd moved back home, to the same bedroom where his trophies still lined the shelves, to the same parents who'd once declared him untouchable. The golden child had finally lost his shine. My parents' world collapsed alongside Tyler's. The numbers were brutal. Over $300,000 invested in Tyler's education, medical school tuition, living expenses, board exam prep courses, all for a career that no longer existed. Then another $50,000 in legal fees as my father desperately tried to find some way to reverse what couldn't be reversed. They'd refinanced their house twice for Tyler's future. Now that future was a smoking crater, and the mortgage payments kept coming. My father's bank quietly suggested he consider early retirement. The official explanation was restructuring, but everyone knew the truth. The branch manager couldn't have a son embroiled in a public academic fraud scandal. Bad for the institution's image. My mother stopped going to her book club, stopped attending church, stopped showing up at the country club where she'd spent years cultivating friendships built on Tyler's achievements. "Did you hear about the Appleton boy?" I imagined the whispers. "Published someone else's research. Lost his medical license. The parents knew, apparently, tried to cover it up." The extended family scattered like roaches when the lights came on. The aunts and uncles who'd sat silently at that Christmas dinner suddenly had scheduling conflicts for every family event. Uncle Robert stopped returning my father's calls. Cousin Jessica unfollowed everyone on social media. I didn't take pleasure in any of this. Really, I didn't. But I'd be lying if I said I felt sorry for them. They'd chosen Tyler over truth, image over integrity, their golden boy over their daughter. They spent 20 years building a pedestal for Tyler. It took 6 weeks for that pedestal to collapse, and them along with it. The difference between them and me was simple. I hadn't built my life on a foundation of lies. So when the earthquakes came, I was still standing. 2 months after the verdict, a package arrived at my Georgetown apartment. There was no return address, but the postmark said Virginia, my parents' state. I almost threw it away unopened, assuming it was some guilt trip gift from my mother. But something made me pause. Inside the padded envelope was a small velvet box. And inside the box, resting on faded satin, was a necklace I hadn't seen in 15 years. My grandmother's cameo pendant. It was antique Victorian, passed down through 4 generations of women in our family. I'd loved it as a little girl, always asking Grandma if I could try it on during visits. She'd promised it would be mine someday. After she died, my mother told me it had been lost in the estate process. I knew immediately where it had actually gone. To a drawer somewhere, saved for a future daughter-in-law who would be deemed worthy of the family heirloom. A note was tucked beneath the box, written in familiar handwriting. Scarlett. I should have spoken up that night. I'm sorry I didn't. I watched my brother give you an impossible choice, and I sat there like a coward. This belonged to Mom. She specifically mentioned wanting you to have it, but your parents said you'd lost interest in old things. I found it in Margaret's jewelry box last week. For what it's worth, I always knew something was wrong with Tyler. I just didn't have the courage to say it. You do. Aunt Patricia. I held the pendant in my palm, feeling its weight. Then I picked up my phone and dialed the number on the note. Hello? Aunt Patricia's voice was cautious. Thank you, I said. She exhaled. You're welcome, honey. And Scarlett, I'm proud of you. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. 6 months after the scandal, my father sent an email. It was the first contact since I'd blocked my mother's number. The subject line read, "Can we talk?" I almost deleted it. Almost. But something, curiosity, maybe, or the stubborn hope that children never quite outgrow, made me click. Scarlett, I know things have been difficult. Your mother and I have had time to reflect. We'd like to have a conversation if you're willing. We want to understand. Dad. I read those words 5 times, looking for the trap. We want to understand was new. My father had never wanted to understand anything about me. I agreed to a video call, on my terms. Just me and him, my mother watching from another room if she wanted, but not participating. His face appeared on my laptop screen, looking 10 years older than when I'd last seen him. Gray had crept into his temples. Deep lines bracketed his mouth. Scarlet. His voice was subdued. Thank you for agreeing to this. What did you want to talk about? He sighed. Your mother and we've realized we handled things poorly. We should have listened to you when you brought us the evidence. I waited. But I still don't understand why you had to do it so publicly, he continued. Why couldn't you come to us first? Let us handle it as a family? And there it was, the trap. I did come to you, I said quietly. You told me to delete the evidence and never mention it again. I mean, really come to us. Give us time to… To what? Cover it up? I shook my head. You didn't want to understand, Dad. You wanted me to be silent. That's not the same thing. He didn't have a response to that. If you want me in your life, I said, there are conditions. My father's eyebrows rose. Conditions? Yes. I kept my voice calm, professional, the same tone I used when presenting research findings. First, you will never ask me to apologize to Tyler. Not for the truth, not for reporting it, not for anything. Scarlett. Second, you will acknowledge, publicly to the rest of the family, that I was right. Not both sides made mistakes. Not it's complicated. The truth, Tyler stole my work, and I had every right to report it. My father's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. Third, you will not contact me if the purpose is to ask me to make peace with Tyler, help him recover, or sacrifice my well-being for his benefit in any way. The silence stretched between us. You're putting conditions on your relationship with your own parents? His voice held disbelief, maybe even a hint of the old authority. That's not how family works. You're right, I agreed. This isn't how family is supposed to work. Families aren't supposed to threaten their children into silence to protect a fraud. But here we are. He looked away from the camera. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller. I don't know if we can do all of that, Scarlett. Then I don't know if we can have a relationship. That's very cold. I shook my head. No, Dad. Cold is choosing your son's image over your daughter's truth. Cold is watching your child be violated and telling her to apologize for bleeding. I leaned back in my chair. I'm not asking for much. I'm just asking to be treated like I matter. If that's too much, then we have nothing more to discuss. I waited. He didn't answer. A week later, the email came. Scarlett, your mother and I have talked extensively about what you said. We appreciate that you're willing to have a relationship, but we can't accept your conditions as stated. Tyler is still our son. He made mistakes, yes, but he's suffered tremendously. Asking us to publicly condemn him, to choose sides between our children, that's not something we're able to do. We hope that in time, you'll understand. Dad. I read the message in my Georgetown apartment, afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. I'd imagined this moment 100 times. I'd prepared myself for it. But reading the words still felt like a door closing. The final, definitive click of a lock I'd been hoping wouldn't engage. They'd chosen. Not Tyler over me exactly, not even their image over the truth. They'd chosen their own comfort, the comfort of never having to admit they were wrong, never having to face what they'd enabled. I typed my reply. Dad, I understand. I wish you and Mom well. Scarlett. That was it. No anger, no pleading, no door left open for them to walk through on their terms. I sent it and closed my laptop. I didn't cry. I'd cried enough in 21 years. Standing by my window, I watched students walking across the Georgetown campus. Young people heading to classes, coffee shops, lives they were building from scratch. I was one of them now. I didn't lose my parents that day. I lost the hope that they would ever choose me. And honestly, that hope had been hurting me for years. Letting it go was a relief. The cherry trees outside were starting to bloom. Spring was coming. So was the rest of my life. 2 years later, I was standing in Dr. Vance's lab at Georgetown, reviewing data from my latest experiment, when she knocked on the door frame. The committee made their decision. she said, a rare smile playing at the corners of her mouth. You got it. The graduate fellowship, full funding for my doctoral research, plus a stipend that meant I'd never have to worry about making rent. One of 7 spots in the country. You're joking. I never joke about academic appointments. She crossed her arms. You've earned this, Scarlett. Your protein synthesis work is some of the most innovative research this department has seen in years. I sank into my chair, suddenly unsteady. My protein synthesis work. Mine. Published under my own name in journals that actually mattered, cited by researchers around the world, recognized as exactly what it had always been, my creation. The irony wasn't lost on me. If Tyler hadn't stolen my original research, I might never have applied to Georgetown, never met Dr. Vance, never had the push I needed to turn my work into something bigger. But that was too generous a narrative. Tyler hadn't given me anything. He'd just failed to keep me down. I'd done this. Every late night, every failed experiment, every revision, mine. I had friends now, real ones, people who saw me, who valued me, who didn't keep me around to serve someone else's ego. I had a mentor who believed in my work. I had an apartment with my name on the lease, a bank account with money I'd earned, a future I was building from scratch. I used to think success meant being acknowledged by my family. Now I knew, success is building a life where their acknowledgement doesn't matter. And I'd built exactly that. I heard about Tyler through Aunt Patricia. We'd kept in touch. Coffee dates when she visited DC, occasional phone calls, the kind of relationship I'd always wished I had with my own mother. She never pushed me to reconcile with my parents, never made excuses for what they'd done. She just listened. Your brother's working again, she mentioned one afternoon. Small clinic in the suburbs, primary care. I stirred my latte, processing this. Tyler had completed his ethics rehabilitation program after 3 years, passed whatever tests they required, got his license reinstated with restrictions, no hospital privileges, no prestigious residencies, just basic outpatient care under supervision. How did he manage that? I asked. Your parents paid for it, every penny. Patricia's voice was neutral, but I caught the undercurrent. What was left of their retirement, anyway? I tried to imagine Tyler in a suburban clinic, seeing patients with colds and routine checkups. No trauma surgeries, no groundbreaking research, no articles in prestigious journals. Just ordinary. Does he know you talk to me? Probably. I stopped caring what that family thinks when they froze me out for sending you Mom's necklace. She smiled slightly. Some things are worth being an outcast for. I thought about Tyler a lot that week. Not with anger. That had faded years ago. Not with satisfaction either. More like acknowledgement. He existed. He was living consequences, that was all. I heard he started therapy, Patricia added. Real therapy, not the mandated stuff. Maybe that was good. Maybe hitting bottom would force him to become the person everyone had pretended he already was. I didn't wish Tyler harm. I just wished he had become the person everyone thought he was, instead of the fraud he chose to be. But that wasn't my problem anymore. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. The email, the investigation, walking away from my family on Christmas morning. The answer is always no. Not because I enjoyed watching Tyler's career implode, not because seeing my parents' comfortable life crumble gave me satisfaction. That was never the point. I don't regret it because I know what the alternative would have been. If I'd stayed silent, Tyler would still be building a career on stolen work. He'd have published more papers, climbed higher, hurt more people. The colleague whose notes he'd stolen would never have found the courage to come forward. The truth would have stayed buried. And me? I would have spent my life knowing I'd let fear decide my future. Every achievement would have felt hollow, shadowed by the knowledge that I'd traded my integrity for approval that was never coming anyway. Some lessons took me 21 years to learn. Setting boundaries with family isn't betrayal, it's survival. Staying silent about injustice isn't keeping the peace, it's becoming complicit. And your worth isn't determined by whether the people who raised you choose to see it. I think about the women who might be watching this, stuck in families where their truth is called jealousy and their achievements are called threats. Women who've been told to shrink themselves to make room for someone else's ego. If that's you, hear me. You are not the problem. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. You don't have to carry secrets that are crushing you. And you don't have to accept a version of love that requires you to disappear. I almost became invisible. I almost let them win. But I chose differently. And that choice was the beginning of everything good that came after. The awards ceremony was held in Georgetown's largest lecture hall. I sat in the front row with the other nominees, trying not to fidget with the hem of my dress. The Graduate Research Excellence Award, recognition for the work I'd built from scratch over 2 years, published under my own name, cited by researchers I actually admired. My name was called. I walked to the podium on shaky legs, accepting the crystal trophy that felt heavier than I'd expected. The audience applauded, faculty members, fellow researchers, people who'd watched me work and grow and become something I'd never imagined I could be. I started my speech, thanking Dr. Vance, acknowledging my research team, expressing gratitude for the fellowship that made it all possible. Then I looked out at the audience and my voice faltered. Third row from the back, near the left aisle. Aunt Patricia was beaming, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, and next to her sat a small woman with silver hair, leaning forward in her seat despite what must have been an exhausting journey. She was wearing the same butterfly brooch I remembered from childhood visits, the one she always wore for special occasions. My grandmother, who my parents had said was too frail to travel. She'd come anyway. I gripped the podium, steadying myself. I also want to thank the people who believed in me, I continued, voice cracking slightly. Even when I didn't know they were there. Even when I thought I was alone. I caught my grandmother's eye. She smiled and pressed her hand to her heart. I thought I'd lost my family that Christmas morning. Turns out, I just lost the wrong parts of it. The right parts found their way back. And that made all the difference. That's my story. And now I want to ask you, if you were faced with a similar situation, if your family demanded silence to protect someone who'd wronged you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes knowing we're not alone is enough to change everything. Thank you for watching. And remember, your truth matters.